So greetings, my friend, to the next video here in my Delta session all about solving core training for you. In the previous episode, we talked about our preparatory exercises to improve coordination and tension control in the core. Now we're going to explore the three basic bread and butter techniques that we'll be implementing in the program. Now, each of these techniques has their own unique advantages, which is why any of them in and of themselves can be great on their own, but collectively they all form a really synergistic, holistic approach to building strong, robust core training. So we're starting off with our planks. Now, plank training and various type techniques bring the advantage of intensity. They're isometric in nature for our core, but they're using leverage as a way to apply an insane level of resistance to the exercise. They're also really good at dialing in tension control and leveling up our ability to effectively stabilize our core while the legs or the arms are in use, which is a big point of using our core training for the sake of functional aspect to sport. We start off with our basic plank with the cat-cow exercise that we had before. So hands are flat on the ground and we're practicing that pelvic tilt. So again, it's abs and glutes are working synergistically to curl the pelvis underneath and building a lot of stability in our back as well. You may want to just warm up, not so much with moving our shoulders, but just getting that pelvic tilt to get that core motion and activation. The first level of our plank training is the bear plank, where all we're going to do is you're going to get into a cow or the cat position and just pick your knees up. This in and of itself is actually harder than it looks, especially if you're squeezing the floor together. From there, we use leverage to progress our resistance. So instead of having the knees bent, we extend the legs out into our classic plank. I usually prefer to do this on the hands rather than the elbows, just because it's easier to adjust the leverage in the body position here. And we don't want to feel in our lower back. If we got in our lower back, that means that we're creating more of a sagging and we're losing the support in our abdominals. So keeping very tight glute activation in the abs, and there from progression, we stretch out even further, allowing the lats to stabilize with the upper body. We don't want the elbows winging out. We want to tuck the elbows in. That helps with the back stability. A lot of these exercises are actually lat and back exercises to boot. Pressing down, squeezing the floor if you can, breathing the whole time, and that's our isometric plank variations. Usually once folks are comfortable with holding a progressive plank for 15, 20 seconds or so, I usually progress them to some sort of stretch out variation. Now, using ab wheels or other tools, as we'll explore in a minute, can even do this with like towels on a hardwood floor can work very well. This is allowing you to add, again, a lot of intensity by flirting with high levels of resistance by stretching out and pulling back in. Usually this is done on the knees, but it can be also done on the toes if you really want to push yourself. But the key with this is to make sure the arms are the only thing moving. And the plank variations are kind of an isometric exercise for your core for the sake of stability. So while there's always the temptation to move the hips back and forth, what that does when our hips go back is effectively removes weight off of our hands. So you want to think of this almost like a push-up variation, where I'm creating that pelvic tilt, pushing my butt down. I'm effectively clenching my butt like I'm trying to push my hips down towards the floor. And that helps lock everything in. And then from there, I stretch out, pull back in. This gives you the advantage of being able to explore very high levels of intensity, because the further out you go, the harder it is. Make sure that your wrists don't break here, because this is awkward on the wrist. You want to always be pushing straight down into the palms when you do this. And you may feel this is very much a back exercise. This sometimes when people say, how do I work my back if I don't have a place to hang like a pull-up bar? This is usually my answer, because this is very much in the lats and the shoulders. So like all core training, if you feel like, well, it's not really in the abs, it's in other muscles, that's great. That is fantastic. Again, working with breathing. You can hear I'm still talking to you, which means I'm breathing. Try not to hold your breath, and always moving in control. A simple way that you can also adjust the difficulty of this is to do this in front of a wall or a sturdy plyo box. So that way, instead of feeling like you're really stretching out to your limit, you have a dedicated stop, boom, where the wheel will hit a limitation. So that way you don't feel like you're flirting with danger there. It's just hitting a limitation of how far out you can go, and then you come back on up. Another effective variation for that reaching and stretch out kind of plank variation is with a saw plank. Feet are suspended on a suspension straps. Again, you can place your toes on like a towel and slide on a slick floor if you like. But this is still the same idea. We have a plank, shoulders are forward, pelvis is tucked, and because our feet are suspended, just that can make the plank substantially more difficult if you like to play with that. But now you can rock back and forth. It's basically the same idea, only instead of anchoring the lower body and moving the arms, we're anchoring our arms and moving our lower body in order to really add a lot of intensity to the exercise. You can also practice kind of an ab wheel sort of approach where the hands are suspended either on the knees or on the toes and stretching out to get the same motion. I usually prefer to do this on straps rather than using the ab wheel because it gives you more ways to add or decrease resistance. Because if I'm forward more, then I have more weight on my feet. It's a lot easier. But if I back up, that adds resistance and it makes the exercise more difficult. I can also change the width of my hands and the width of my feet to effectively make the exercise more difficult, or even move my hands as I see fit for the sake of ergonomics. So my back, my entire core, and even my hips are working to a very high level. The second group of core exercises that we focus on is the dynamic variation. And this is a little bit more targeted towards your rectus abdominis, your coveted six-pack muscles, but it still involves the entire core to a large degree. And we're gonna start here on the floor, although there are hanging and suspended versions of this as well. There's two main variations. There's leg raises and there's sit-ups. Each one is basically the same kind of idea. I know a lot of times people are thinking, well, are we working upper abs or lower abs and stuff? And usually this is just a reflection of poor tension control in the abs. Ideally, with all of these exercises that we're exploring, the entire core should be being used as one cohesive unit, and there shouldn't really feel like there's much emphasis in one area or the other. It should all be working all the time, which is how we get much more out of these exercises. To start with our leg raise variations, I'm gonna lay on the ground, palms are up. I know it's very common to put the hands underneath the hips, but that's a very big mistake. And the reason is because we don't want our hands supporting our pelvis, we want our abs supporting our pelvis. Putting our hands underneath the hips during this is like doing dumbbell curls and then doing it with the other arm, like, oh, that's much easier. Yeah, we don't want that assistance. If it does feel overloaded, and again, stress in the lower back, that means you have too much resistance, you need to work on your tension control, and you need to reduce resistance for the exercise. Because just because you can do the exercise doesn't mean it's the appropriate level of resistance to get what you want out of the exercise. So we have our palms up, head is relaxed, and we start with our knees bent, heels on the floor. From here, again, glutes are tight, abs are tight, always setting the tension first, and then we just lift and come back down under control. Let the heels kiss the floor and back up. Resistance is real easy to adjust. Straighter legs. Always with control. Leg raise techniques are common to have a lot of momentum behind them. We don't want momentum, we want strength. So we're lifting with control, top to bottom, and then eventually going straight, keeping tension in the abs the whole time, which again may be difficult if you're not used to it or have poor tension control from lack of coordination. Sit-ups are the other variation that we're going to play around with. And this is a more advanced version of a sit-up. It's sometimes referred to as like a Janda sit-up, as I understand it, is instead of anchoring our feet down or someone holding us down, we're going to use our own muscles for support for this. The way we do that is we use our hamstrings and our glutes to effectively push the heels down into the ground. Knees are slightly kinked, like so, and we start laying down. Hands are up, or they can be down along the floor. Just make sure you're not, again, jerking and trying to use momentum for this. Driving the heels down, creating the tension in the glutes and the abs as well, and then we sit up under control. The more you push your heels down, the harder this will be. Keeping tension on the abs from start to finish. If you want to make it harder, you can bend your knees, which will add substantial amount of resistance. Always sitting up and down with control. You can also adjust resistance with your hand position. If your hands are higher versus lower, that can have a micro adjustment on the difficulty. This is the beauty of all these exercises. It's so easy to make them go from fairly easy to ridiculously hard and everywhere in between. A fun suspension variation of the sit-up is to have your hands in the foot slings, or if you're using gymnastics rings, you can do the same thing, pressing down. And now instead of pushing down into our feet, we're pushing down into our hands. This gives you a lot of minute control over the resistance, but also adjusts the difficulty based on where your hand position is in width and length. If you pull your arms back, it's easier. Straight is harder. So you start off sitting with the straps roughly about knee height, maybe a little bit lower, just to have some ergonomics. You want to feel like your hands are gliding along the floor. So as you come down, always pushing down into the handles. It doesn't take a lot of pressure. A little bit of force downwards can make it significantly more difficult, which is why we don't need to bother holding on to big, heavy weights or using like sit-up benches and all these other contraptions. Just this and pushing down into our hands will supply more than enough resistance to progress your sit-ups wherever you want to go with them. Of course, leg raises are always a little bit more popular for building up your rectus abdominis in the calisthenics world for their versatility. This is because you can also adjust the resistance against your legs and therefore your abdominals through a change in your body's angle of gravity. One way to do that is with dips on a dip bar, or sometimes you see those types of like captain's chairs, machines that you can find in home gyms, power towers, or even in some commercial gyms as well. But the key here is to engage your back as much as possible when you lift off. You want to feel like you're supporting yourself with your back. If you're using one of those kind of captain's chairs, you almost want to keep your back off that back pad if possible, because you want your back supporting yourself, because big part, like with the stretch outs, of training your abs is using back support for tension. Holding yourself up and lifting your legs up in front. Again, trying not to use much momentum. Putting a pause in the top goes a long way. If you don't have enough back tension, you're going to feel your hips kicking back. every time you lift up. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is significantly easier and much less effective. So make sure your lats are really engaged, triceps too, as you lift up as high as you can. Not swinging, which is also a sign of a lack of back tension. Progression, as always, is just straightening out the legs. So easier, harder, hardest with making your legs as straight as you can. And as always, there are hanging variations for leg raises as well. This is another example of how back strength and support comes into the picture, because a lot of times people do this and they're swinging around, which is almost always a sign that their back tension isn't dialed in. So if possible, you'll have a pull-up bar. You can grab on your tippy toes, tighten up your arms, and you want to squeeze your back together to provide supportive tension. Abs are tight, knees bent. For easier, half bent. For middle ground, and then straight. For more difficulty focusing on range, the higher you go, the more effective the exercise will be. Trying not to use momentum, but control with a subtle pause at the top will always provide an adequate challenge. Finally, the third category of our bread and butter core exercises are lateral chain techniques. This puts a little bit more emphasis in the muscles that run up along your spine, your lumbar spine, your obliques, and a little bit more also in your TVA or transverse abdominis. It doesn't really focus much on the rectus abdominis, but it does hit the obliques to a fair degree as well. There's lots of variations we can use to kind of bring a little bit more variety into the technique. But nonetheless, this is where I like to start folks off. The classic side plank exercises on the floor. The trick here is to not lean on your elbow, but instead to bring your shoulder blades back so your weight goes a little bit more into your forearm. This way you're not putting all the pressure on your elbow, and you're also not feeling like you're kind of falling backwards, but instead very supported onto your forearm. Chest is forward, and we can start on our knees. The knees are in alignment with my torso, so my entire body is straight. We don't want to be flexed, but instead extending the hips forward, kind of like I'm pushing my hips forward, and I am just holding here. As straight in alignment as possible, and I'm also squeezing the floor together. So I'm also feeling it in my back. Again, back and core work synergistically. From there, progression is straight legs. Bottom leg is on, or the bottom leg is in the front. Staggered stance. Again, focusing on the squeeze. You can always progress it like regular planks, where you're stretching your body out to add resistance. You can stack your feet. This will provide a little bit more instability. Whenever we add instability, we force our muscles to work harder to provide that stability. Shoulders are back, and again, hips are all the way forward and holding for time. Simple basic progression from there is a couple of fun things. One is elevating the hips up and down. Always smooth and controlled. If you want to put a little bit more emphasis into your hips, you can lift the top leg up. You can combine the two. And if you would like to have a little bit of fun more with shoulder stability, you can stagger your feet and have a twisting rotation. This is very good for shoulder stability. Going in reps, always in a controlled motion. A lot of times with lateral chain exercises, people ask about twisting motions. And there's a lot we can do with this. The twisting that we just had on the plank is a little bit more for shoulder strength and stability, but we can also employ the classic Russian twist. And this involves just leaning back. Again, we don't need to anchor our feet if we have adequate hamstring and hip activation to push our heels down. Hands are together. Lean back to apply resistance, and we twist gently and smooth. In some ways, this is almost more of a mobility exercise for the lumbar spine, the back. We can add resistance by extending the arm out and by leaning back further. It's usually not the most intense exercise. Lots of times when people strive for really intense twisting motions, they resort to like locking their legs in, holding onto a plate and stuff, which can put a lot of shearing stress on the vertebrae. And it can be done safely, but generally it increases the amount of risk. Furthermore, it's not exactly like having a large amount of resistance or intensity with this. It's gonna do a whole lot for your core strength, much less the aesthetics of the core. You could lock your feet and be doing this with a 100-pound dumbbell. It's really not gonna make your core look or feel or even function all that different. It's more about the control and the movement and mobility that you have with that. But it's not necessarily an exercise you have for huge amounts of brute strength. The plank variations and progressive flexion variations are more of what that's suitable for. As always, you can progress your side plank techniques by elevating your feet up. This increases the range of motion that you can have for your side bend technique, whether it's on a shallow plyo box or even an aerobic step. Again, if we go with instability of suspension straps, it's going to make it even more difficult still. But the advantage also with elevating on suspension straps is it gives you the advantage to use a saw plank motion with side plank variations. Again, bottom leg is on the bottom, and I put my heels to toe when I'm doing this for the sake of control and consistency, rather than letting my legs kind of float around. Heel to toe gives you much more control. Again, it's worth noting that a lot of times people will look at side plank exercise and they're like, oh, this is good for like love handles and stuff. And it's like, nope. It really doesn't do anything whatsoever for body fat here in the side or anything. It's, again, just addressing the strength and thickness of the muscle bellies along your lateral chain and with your obliques especially. So if it's more of a love handle kind of body fat thing, that's again about calorie balance. As with all calisthenics exercises, there are loads of other variations, lots of other core exercises that you can play with, but most of them are just tweaks and adjustments and differences between these three main basic techniques that you're employing. This is, for the most part, all you're ever going to need in your core training. By all means, experiment with fun variations, dragon flags, unique sit-up variations and stuff if that's kind of your thing, but don't think that you're really gonna get anything really all that different with exercises outside of these techniques and progressions. These are bread and butter moves that will work and are reliable, safe, and consistent for strong core training with a direct approach towards building up the rectus abdominis and obliques while also incorporating your core with the rest of your body. Now let's take a look at how to apply this stuff into a little bit of a mini routine depending on how much time and resources that you have in the next video. Be fit, live free.